The Draft Environmental Permitting Electricity Generating Stations Amendment Regulations 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, as always. I beg to move that the Environmental Permitting Electricity Generating Stations Amendment Regulations 2024, which were laid in draft before this House on the 30th of October 2024, be approved. This government believes that the answers to the challenges around energy security, affordability and sustainability don't point in different directions, but in the same direction, and that is clean power. Investing in clean power at speed and scale can help tackle the climate crisis and create good jobs. It is the only route to protect bill payers and ensure energy security. And that is why making Britain a clean energy superpower by 2030 is one of the 5 central missions of this government. While renewable energy is at the heart of our plan to deliver clean power, we also know that we must bring forward low carbon generation sources, providing added security for when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. This includes flexible supply sources that can scale up or down instantaneously to meet peak demand. Some of this flexibility can be provided by short duration technologies such as batteries, which can help balance the system within each day. But we know that we will also need long duration technologies which can run for extended periods of low renewable production. To meet this challenge, this government is investing in low carbon flexible technologies such as carbon capture and storage at existing power stations, hydrogen and long duration electricity storage. This flexibility is critical to maintaining a constant supply of electricity in the UK, keeping the lights on for millions of homes and businesses. However, as these new low-carbon technologies scale up, we will continue to need reliable, mature technologies, including gas, to provide energy security. Gas is expected to be used less in our future energy system, taking a backseat and only to maintain security of supply. While gas will continue to play an important role in the system, it's only right that we should expect any new or substantially refurbished combustion plants to be built net zero ready. This is why we're updating the existing regime and introducing the new decarbonisation readiness requirements. Before I turn in detail to the decarbonisation requirements, let me set out the current regime. So since 2009, all new build combustion power plants in Great Britain sized over 300 megawatts have been subject to the carbon capture readiness requirements. These regulations require plant operators to demonstrate that it is technically and economically feasible to retrofit carbon capture and storage technology. Due to the 300 megawatt threshold, this policy has seen limited application since 2009. It has also contributed to a costly market distortion by incentivising the building of smaller, less efficient plants and inadvertently creating an unacceptable loophole. This has resulted in a significant number being built at 299 megawatts to avoid the carbon capture readiness requirements. The policy landscape has changed significantly as well since the carbon capture readiness requirements were introduced. Plant operators now have an alternative pathway to decarbonise through hydrogen-fired generation, as well as the introduction of the UK's legal obligation to meet carbon budgets and reach net zero by 2050. So in March 2023, under the previous government, a final consultation on the decarbonisation readiness proposals was published, alongside the publication of 2 technical studies for hydrogen and carbon capture and storage. The consultation received positive feedback from industry, and we published a response in mid-October giving the go-ahead to proposals set out in the consultation. So let me turn now to the detail of the regulations. This statutory instrument will amend the Environmental Permitting England and Wales Regulations 2016 by inserting a new schedule, Schedule 25C. The instrument will remove the 300 megawatt minimum capacity threshold. This will remove any existing market distortion and support rapid decarbonisation by ensuring that nearly all new and substantially refurbished combustion power plants must have a credible plan to decarbonise. The regulations will also move the requirements from the planning consent process, where they currently sit for carbon capture readiness, to environmental permitting. This will ensure that the responsibility for regulating the requirements falls to the Environment Agency rather than local planning authorities and the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. Unlike local planning authorities, the Environment Agency is already involved in the assessment of carbon capture readiness and have the technical expertise to assess the requirements. And as I mentioned a moment ago, this will include hydrogen readiness as well. The new requirements will now enable combustion plants to demonstrate decarbonisation readiness through conversion to hydrogen firing as well as carbon capture. In doing so, the instrument introduces hydrogen conversion readiness and carbon capture readiness assessments, which are proportionate to the developing nature of hydrogen to power and carbon capture and storage. The requirements will also expand the generation technologies in scope of the requirements to include biomass, energy from waste and combined heat and power plants. This will ensure that a higher number of carbon-intensive plants are now captured. These updated requirements are intended to strike a balance. It ensures that new build plants and the refurbishment of old sites are conducted ready to take full advantage of future decarbonisation opportunities, whilst also acknowledging the emerging state of hydrogen and carbon capture technologies and their enabling infrastructure. We expect the requirements will be strengthened over time as the generation technology improves and clarity on enabling infrastructure availability increases. To ensure we continually assess the impact of the policy and the case for strengthening the requirements, we've included a statutory requirement for the government to carry out a review of the policy in periods of not exceeding 5 years. In summary, these regulations will ensure that the gas capacity that we need for the security of supply is future-proofed and has a credible plan to transition to low-carbon operation. In doing so, it will help deliver our aim to become a clean energy superpower and deliver net zero by 2050. And I commend these draft regulations to the House.
Yeah. The question is that the committee has considered the draft environmental permitting electricity generating stations amendment regulations 2024. I call the Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Vickers. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and indeed to serve under your chairmanship for yet another delegated legislation committee this morning. Seems like every Tuesday morning we're spending in these committee rooms doing yet another deal. I'm pleased to be here. Indeed, this was this regulation being brought forward today is as a result of a consultation that we launched when we were in government back in March. It was very encouraging to see the response published in October and indeed to see the regulations brought forward today. As the Minister has set out, it brings in new requirements for combustion plants or for those being refurbished. It introduces the regulatory requirements of a new decarbonisation readiness report as a prerequisite for environmental permitting approval. It also entails requiring new combustion plants to be built with regard to how they could be decarbonised in the future, for example by converting to hydrogen firing or retrofit carbon capture technology under environmental permitting regulations. Now, as I said, I'm very supportive of this, we are very supportive of this, and I think we are all supportive of the growth of new technologies like CCUS and their potential to cut our carbon emissions. For the combustion plants where it is economically and technically viable, implementation of such technology should indeed be considered. I note, however, no impact assessment has been produced, as this regulation is not expected to impose significant costs to businesses. However, it's noted in the regulations today that this is expected to have an economic impact on small and micro businesses affected by the change to the 300 megawatt threshold. Now, we all want a future, and the Chancellor herself has said that growth is her #1 priority where small businesses can thrive. Might the Minister give more detail of what support might be being made available to small and micro businesses who will see this new burden on them as they seek to decarbonise along with the rest of the country? This, Mr Vickers, is a sensible move. We do worry about and have some reservations about the impact on small and micro businesses, and indeed would be keen to see more detail about what engagement the Department has had with the Scottish and Welsh governments, given that, as it says in the regulations, this is an evolved area, but decarbonisation is a UK-wide effort. But in that vein, Mr Vickers, we have no objection to this regulation going through today, and so I will draw my remarks to a close.
No. Minister to respond.
Thank you, Chair. And can I thank the opposition spokesperson for his support, and I think we're all on the same page with this. I think just a couple of comments in response to what he has said. He's talked about the impact on business, particularly smaller ones, and of course we're all mindful of that. What the regulations require are kind of 4 things for people to do. One is to look at the kind of space they have and whether it's technically possible for the transition to be made. And they also have to look at whether they've considered hydrogen or carbon capture and whether that's economically feasible. And those second 2 is entirely self-reporting. So it shouldn't be a very difficult process, and I know the Environment Agency are also looking at ways to roll up the different requirements and regulations that companies have to contribute towards, and to see whether you can have a single application rather than multiple for lots of different things that they have to fill in. But we can provide more information for that. But I have had a meeting with officials to talk about just that issue, so he makes a good point, and it's one that we're certainly mindful of. These regulations only apply in England, because the Scottish and Welsh authorities have different rules and different policies in this area, so these only apply, and of course we've been talking to the nations about it, but this regulation for today is only covering England, and in that vein I commend it to the House.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft environmental permitting electricity generating stations amendment regulations 2024. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order.